Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Hedy Lamarr was one of the most fascinating women of the 20th century, celebrated as a glamorous Hollywood star while also making groundbreaking contributions to science and technology. Early life. She was born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler on November 9, 1914, in Vienna, Austria, into a well-to-do Jewish family. From an early age, Hedy showed both beauty and intelligence. Though she studied piano and ballet, she was equally curious about how things worked, often taking apart household objects to examine their mechanics. Rise to stardom. Her acting career began in Europe, where she gained international attention for the 1933 film Ecstasy. The film was controversial due to its nudity and sensual themes, but it brought her recognition across Europe. In 1937, fleeing an oppressive marriage to Austrian arms manufacturer Friedrich Mandl and the rising threat of Nazism, she escaped to London. There, she met MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer, who offered her a contract and brought her to Hollywood. Adopting the stage name Hedy Lamarr, she quickly became one of MGM's top stars of the 1940s. She starred in hits such as Algiers, 1938, Boomtown, 1940, Ziegfeld Girl, 1941, White Cargo, 1942, and Samson and Delilah, 1949. With her striking beauty and exotic screen presence, she was often billed as the most beautiful woman in the world. Inventor and innovator. Despite her glamorous image, Lamarr was far more than a screen siren. In her spare time, she pursued inventing, applying her analytical mind to practical problems. During World War II, she co-invented a frequency-hopping spread-spectrum technology with composer George Antheil. Their invention, designed to prevent the jamming of radio-controlled torpedoes, laid the groundwork for modern technologies like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. Although the U.S. Navy initially dismissed the idea, decades later her contribution was recognized as visionary. In 1997, Lamarr received the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award, and she was inducted posthumously into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014. Personal life. Hedy Lamarr's personal life was as dramatic as her films. She was married 6 times and had 3 children. Known for her sharp wit and strong will, she often clashed with Hollywood executives who tried to typecast her. Later in life, she withdrew from public view, becoming somewhat reclusive. Later years and legacy. Lamarr passed away on January 19, 2000, in Castleberry, Florida, at the age of 85. Over time, her legacy shifted from being remembered solely as a film star to being honored as a pioneer of modern communication technology. Today, she is celebrated as both a symbol of Hollywood's golden age and a woman ahead of her time whose brilliance extended far beyond the silver screen. Sparkles. Hedy Lamarr remains an enduring icon, a reminder that beauty and intellect can coexist, and that innovation sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Childhood and early influences. Hedy Lamarr grew up in Vienna in a comfortable, cultured household. Her father, a successful banker, nurtured her curiosity by explaining how machines worked. From streetcars to printing presses. Her mother was a pianist, and Hedy studied piano, ballet, and acting from a young age. This dual upbringing, art and science, shaped her lifelong passions. By her teenage years, she was already acting in stage plays and was discovered by director Max Reinhardt, who helped her develop her craft. European film career and escape from Austria in 1933. At just 18 years old, she starred in Ecstasy, a Czechoslovakian film that shocked audiences for its nudity and a realistic love scene. Though criticized at the time, It cemented her notoriety and fame. Shortly afterward, she married Friedrich Mandl, a wealthy arms dealer with ties to fascist leaders Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. Mandl was controlling and jealous, often keeping her isolated. Ironically, it was at his business dinners and meetings with weapons manufacturers that Hedy absorbed knowledge about military technology. This exposure would later inspire her ideas about secure communications. In 1937, she fled her marriage, first to Paris and then to London, where she charmed Louis B. Mayer of MGM into giving her a Hollywood contract. Hollywood stardom. Hedy's arrival in Hollywood was sensational. Mayer renamed her Hedy Lamarr to distance her from the scandal of Ecstasy. With her exotic beauty, she became a major star of the late 1930s and 1940s. Some notable films include Algiers, 1938, her American debut, where she played opposite Charles Boyer. The film made her an instant sensation. Boomtown, 1940, starring alongside Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy. Comrade X, 1940, a spy comedy also with Clark Gable. White Cargo, 1942, where she delivered the famous line, "I am Tondaleo." Samson and Delilah, 1949, Cecil B. DeMille's biblical epic, one of the biggest box office hits of its time. Though admired for her beauty, Hedy grew frustrated with Hollywood's limited roles. She wanted to be recognized for her mind as well as her looks. Inventor and visionary during World War II. Disturbed by the brutality of the conflict, she wanted to contribute beyond acting. Drawing on her earlier exposure to military technology, she collaborated with avant-garde composer George Antheil to create a system for secure, interference-proof communication. Their 1942 patent described frequency-hopping spread spectrum technology, in which radio signals would rapidly switch frequencies to avoid being intercepted or jammed. At the time, the U.S. Navy dismissed the idea as impractical, but decades later, its principles became vital to modern wireless communications. Today, Lamarr is recognized as a pioneer whose work underpins technologies like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, and modern mobile networks. Personal struggles. Despite her brilliance, Lamarr's personal life was often troubled. She married 6 times and struggled with the demands of fame. She was often misunderstood and reduced to a screen goddess, overshadowing her intellectual contributions. Later in life, she became reclusive, communicating mostly by telephone. Legal battles, financial struggles, and cosmetic surgery mishaps added to her challenges. Recognition and legacy. Hedy Lamarr lived long enough to see her scientific contributions finally acknowledged. In 1997, she and George Antheil were awarded the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award. That same year, she was also honored with the Bulby Nass Spirit of Achievement Award, known as the Oscar for Inventors. After her death in 2000, her reputation only grew. She was posthumously inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014. Documentaries like Bombshell, The Hedy Lamarr Story, 2017, helped introduce her to new generations, not just as a glamorous actress but as a brilliant inventor. Conclusion. Hedy Lamarr's story is one of contrasts. A woman hailed as the most beautiful face of Hollywood's golden age, who also had a mind that helped shape the wireless world we rely on today. She was far ahead of her time, embodying resilience, creativity, and brilliance in an era that often dismissed women's intellectual contributions. She remains a cultural and scientific icon, a reminder that true genius can wear many faces. Personal life and marriages. Hedy Lamarr's off-screen life was as dramatic as any Hollywood film. She was married 6 times, and each relationship reflected different chapters of her turbulent life. Friedrich Mandl, 1933–1937, Austrian arms manufacturer. He was wealthy and controlling, often treating Hedy as a possession. She later called him the strangest man I ever met. She eventually fled both him and Austria. Jean Marchi, 1939–1941, a screenwriter and producer. Their marriage lasted only a year. During this time, she adopted a son, James. John Loder, 1943–1947, a British actor. They had 2 children together, Denise and Anthony. Teddy Stauffer, 1951–1952, a Swiss nightclub owner. Their marriage was short-lived. W. Howard Lee, 1953–1960, a Texas oilman. This was one of her longer marriages. After their divorce, Lee married actress Jean Tierney. Louis J. Boys, 1963–1965, a lawyer. Their marriage was brief and marked the end of Hedy's ventures into matrimony. Hedy herself once joked that she was a better inventor than a wife. Challenges in later life. As Hollywood moved on from its golden age, Lamarr's career declined. The industry that had celebrated her beauty now offered her fewer roles. By the 1950s and 1960s, she struggled financially and faced legal issues, including a highly publicized shoplifting arrest in 1966. The charges were later dropped. Her relationship with her children was strained, particularly with her son James, whom she gave up for adoption early in his life. She also pursued cosmetic surgery, which was then experimental, and the results were mixed. This fed into her reclusiveness during her later years in Florida. Recognition and redemption. Though much of her life was marked by being misunderstood, the 1990s brought her some measure of redemption. The tech community finally began to recognize her contributions. She accepted awards via telephone, still avoiding the spotlight but grateful to be acknowledged for her intellect. She once said, "The brains of people are more interesting than the looks, I think." Influence on women in STEM today. Hedy Lamarr is regarded as a trailblazer, a woman who proved that beauty and intelligence are not mutually exclusive. She is celebrated as a role model for women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, inspiring countless women to pursue careers in fields once dominated by men. Her story has become symbolic. The glamorous starlet who secretly helped invent the foundation for modern wireless communication. Schools, tech conferences, and feminist circles often cite her as an example of overlooked female genius. Pop culture legacy. Hedy Lamarr's life continues to influence popular culture. The 2017 documentary Bombshell. The Hedy Lamarr story reintroduced her to audiences worldwide. The DC Comics character Catwoman was partly modeled on Lamarr's look. She has been referenced in songs, novels, and plays. In 2019, actress Gal Gadot, known for playing Wonder Woman, announced plans to portray her in a TV miniseries, bringing her story to new generations. Final thought. Hedy Lamarr's life was full of paradoxes. A woman who fled fascism but married into power, who dazzled the world with beauty but preferred the company of inventions, who was adored yet lonely. Her true legacy is not only her unforgettable presence on screen but also her profound impact on the digital age, a world where nearly every smartphone, GPS device, and Wi-Fi router carries a spark of her genius. She is remembered today as both a Hollywood legend and the mother of Wi-Fi. Timeline of Hedy Lamarr's life. 1914 birth. Born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler on November 9, 1914, in Vienna, Austria. 1930–1933. Early acting career. Began acting in German films. Starred in Ecstasy, 1933, gaining worldwide notoriety. 1933 to 1937 first marriage and escape, married Friedrich Mandl, arms dealer and Nazi sympathizer. Learned about military technology at his side. Escaped in 1937, traveling to London. 1937–1938 moved to Hollywood, signed with MGM after meeting Louis B. Mayer. Adopted the name Hedy Lamarr. 1938–1949 Hollywood stardom, starred in films such as Algiers 1938, Boomtown 1940, White Cargo 1942, Samson and Delilah 1949, one of the biggest hits of the decade. 1942 The invention with composer George Antheil. Patented a frequency hopping system to prevent torpedo jamming. U.S. Navy ignored it at the time. 1950s to 1960s, decline in career, film roles dwindled. Tried producing films herself but had limited success. Faced legal and financial troubles. 1966 shoplifting arrest, arrested in Los Angeles, charges later dropped. The incident became tabloid fodder. 1970s to 1980s, reclusiveness, retreated into private life in Florida, rarely appearing in public. Continued inventing privately. 1997 recognition as inventor, received the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award. Also awarded the Bulby Nass Spirit of Achievement Award. 2000 death, passed away on January 19, 2000. In Castleberry, Florida, at age 85. 2014 posthumous honor, inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Clapperboard career highlights, beauty as stardom. Hedy was often cast as the exotic seductress, which typecast her. Still, she became one of MGM's most bankable stars. Samson and Delilah, 1949, perhaps her most famous film, a box office juggernaut. Independent producer. She was among the early women in Hollywood to try producing films, showing entrepreneurial ambition. Year scientific contribution, the patent, 1942, patent number 2,292,387, described a secret communication system. It used synchronized piano rolls to rapidly change radio frequencies. Concept dismissed in the 1940s, but resurfaced in the 1960s and beyond. Modern applications, her idea became the foundation of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, military satellite communications. She never profited financially from the invention, but history later gave her recognition as a true visionary. Heartbreak, personal challenges, marriages. 6 failed marriages, often to controlling or incompatible men. Loneliness. Despite fame, she often felt isolated. Finances. Wealth faded later in life, she sometimes lived modestly. Appearance. Pursued cosmetic surgery in her later years, but results brought regret. Light bulb philosophy and personality. Hedy Lamarr often expressed frustration at being valued only for her looks. She famously said, "Any girl can be glamorous. All you have to do is stand still and look stupid." This was both witty and bitter, a reflection of Hollywood's treatment of her. She preferred intellectual company and once admitted that her happiest moments were not on red carpets, but while inventing. Globe cultural impact, icon of feminism and STEM. Today she's recognized as a pioneer for women in technology, embodying how brilliance can be overlooked due to gender and beauty stereotypes. Documentaries and biographies. Ecstasy and Me, her 1966 ghostwritten autobiography, though she later disavowed it. Bombshell, The Hedy Lamarr Story, 2017 documentary. Pop culture. Catwoman's slinky persona in comics was inspired in part by Lamarr. Trophy legacy. Hedy Lamarr's dual legacy is unique. Hollywood goddess, remembered for her striking beauty and classic films. Inventive genius, remembered as the mother of Wi-Fi, and a scientific mind far ahead of her time. Today, universities, tech groups, and feminist organizations celebrate her as an icon of overlooked brilliance. Sparkle's Hedy Lamarr was both the most beautiful woman in the world and one of the most ingenious minds of her century. Her life proves that true greatness often hides behind unexpected masks. Rose Hedy Lamarr. Beauty and brilliance. Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler came into the world on November 9, 1914, in Vienna, Austria, with dark eyes that already seemed to hold secrets. Her father, a banker, spoke to her not like a child, but as a student, explaining how machines ticked, how trains ran, how the world was built. Those evenings with him, listening and learning, shaped her mind as much as any classroom could. But it was her face, not her intellect, that caught the world's attention first. By her late teens, she was acting in films. And in 1933 the world gasped at Ecstasy, the Czechoslovakian picture that showed her running naked through the woods and lying in the throes of passion. The Catholic Church denounced it. Dictators banned it, but the image of Hedy Lamarr was already burned into the public imagination. Mantelpiece clock. Escaped from a golden cage at 19, she married Friedrich Mandl, a munitions tycoon with connections to Mussolini and Hitler. The young bride lived in a gilded cage, dressed in jewels, paraded before generals and politicians. But Mandl underestimated her. While seated silently at arms-dealing banquets, she absorbed the technical conversations around her, about weapons, about guidance systems, about the vulnerabilities of radio control. Unwilling to live as her husband's trophy, she plotted escape. Disguising herself as a maid, she fled his mansion in 1937, leaving behind Vienna, Mandl, and the rising shadow of Nazism. She carried with her not only her beauty, but the seeds of ideas that would later change the world. Movie camera. Hollywood star. In London, she met Louis B. Mayer, who signed her to MGM. He rechristened her Hedy Lamarr, and in 1938 she arrived in America, introduced as the world's most beautiful woman. On screen, she was a vision. Algiers, 1938, made her a sensation. Audiences whispered about her exotic accent, her porcelain skin, the way her eyes could command a room. She played opposite Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, Jimmy Stewart, and Victor Mature. By 1949, she had conquered the box office with Cecil B. DeMille's Samson and Delilah, one of the most successful films of its era. Yet Hollywood limited her. She longed for roles with substance but was too often cast as the mysterious seductress. The studios saw her beauty, they missed her brain. Gear. The inventor in the shadows off-screen. Hedy worked late into the night in her home laboratory, tinkering with inventions. During World War II, she was deeply troubled by reports of Allied torpedoes being jammed by the Axis powers. Remembering the military technology she'd overheard during her first marriage, she sketched ideas. With the help of avant-garde composer George Antheil, she devised a system that used piano rolls to synchronize rapid shifts in radio frequencies, preventing enemies from intercepting signals. In 1942, they received a U.S. patent for a secret communication system. The Navy dismissed it as impractical. For decades, it sat forgotten. But the principle of frequency hopping spread spectrum would later become the backbone of wireless communication, the technology that powers Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, and smartphones. The glamorous actress, known worldwide for her beauty, had quietly laid the groundwork for the digital age. Heartbreak, decline, and struggles. The 1950s brought fewer roles. Hollywood had moved on. And Hedy, once its brightest star, drifted into obscurity. Her 6 marriages ended in divorce. She lost much of her wealth, was sued, and in 1966 was even arrested for shoplifting. Though charges were dropped, loneliness crept in. She underwent cosmetic surgeries that left her dissatisfied, retreating further from public life. For decades, she lived quietly in Florida, speaking to the world mostly by telephone. Glowing star recognition at last. Only in the 1990s did the world begin to rediscover her genius. In 1997, she received the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award for her wartime invention. The same year, she was honored with the Bulby Nass Spirit of Achievement Award, often called the Oscar of Inventing. She accepted by phone, her voice still elegant, though she no longer appeared in public. On January 19, 2000, Hedy Lamarr died at the age of 85. By then, she was remembered not just as a star of Hollywood's golden age, but as the unlikely mother of modern wireless communication. Sparkle's legacy. Hedy Lamarr's life was a paradox. She was worshipped for her beauty, yet longed to be admired for her intelligence. She lived in the spotlight, yet spent her later years in solitude. She was underestimated, and yet she changed the world in ways no one imagined. Today, she is celebrated as both a cinematic legend and a STEM pioneer, an icon whose story inspires women in science, technology, and the arts. As she once said with wry wisdom, "The world isn't getting any easier. With all these new inventions, I believe that people are hurried more and pushed more. The biggest people with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest people with the smallest minds. Think big anyway." Hedy Lamarr, The Most Beautiful Mind. Act 1, The Star is Born. Vienna, 1914. A little girl with curious eyes takes apart a music box while her banker father kneels beside her, explaining its gears. Hedwig Kiesler is restless, hungry for knowledge. But the world only sees her beauty. At 17, she bursts into European cinema. By 19, she shocks the world in Ecstasy. The image of her running naked through the woods will follow her forever. She marries Friedrich Mandl, an arms tycoon who cages her in a life of
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.